Hey guys, welcome to Sela Social Studies.
Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Okay, so today we're going to cover the effect on Americans, right? We covered Hoover's response to the Great Depression. We covered Roosevelt's response to the Great Depression. But what had actually happened to American citizens and the economy and stuff like that? Between 1929 and 1932, our massive stock market at the time just plummeted from about a worth of $87 billion down to about $15 billion. So it drastically dropped. Unemployment shot up between that same period of time from only about 1.5 million Americans up to about 12 million Americans in 1932. About 25% of the population was unemployed. Okay, 1 out of every 4 people who were able to work were out of work. What type of things would people do to get money, right? So many Americans actually took major pay cuts. They took a large pay cut just to stay to work. They would rather take a cut in pay and work for a little bit of pay than lose the job. So they took this pay cut instead of taking the pink slip. So they would do other things as well to try to get money. They would take laundry in to try to just do people's laundry and sell it. People would walk along the streets. They would pick apples. They would go to stores and buy apples, and they would try to sell apples on the street for a profit. Many people sold all their goods that they had. You see famous pictures of people selling cars, right? There's a famous picture out there that says, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it says, lost everything on the stock market, cash only. It's like a brand new car. It looks sweet. It's only $100, right? So they're selling off their property. They're selling apples. They're doing laundry. They're taking a lot less pay to do this work. Why? Because they have no money. The stock market really ruined them. When they went to go get their money out of the banks and the banks were like, sorry, we're closed, they have nothing. You literally woke up one day with a job, having money, everything was going great, and by the time he got home, there was nothing. Right? There is a picture out there of a lady who's standing by his side, and she's like running up the stairs crying, and it says like 4 kids for sale or something like that. I mean, these people were desperate for money. They were eating rotten meat, stuff like that. Who was the hardest hit out of this? You have to remember, this is the stock market crash. So you have the majority of the people who are with the stock market, those stockbrokers losing money. However, when you talk about the hardest hit demographically, it was by far the African Americans. Majority of the white people in the United States at the time were not hit as terribly bad as the group of African Americans in this country. African Americans, the Mexican Americans in the Southwest during the Dust Bowl, and we'll get to that, right? So you have a lot of minority groups really getting hit hard, and African Americans are by far the hardest hit. Now, what would they do in the city, right, to try to help? What is the government going to do to try to help these people who have lost their jobs and are selling apples? Well, the government would do things like set up soup kitchens, okay, charity lines where men would line up for like miles. You would see these lines with hundreds of men in line just waiting for a bowl of soup or some sort of charity or a bread kitchen. And believe it or not, like Al Capone, the famous mobster, he actually opened up like the first soup kitchen and charity line in Chicago. Right? So this is what's going on in the city. Soup kitchens selling things, charity lines. And unfortunately, remember I mentioned something about the Dust Bowl. Unfortunately, something else happens in the Midwest of our country that really hammers down as well, right? So we don't even have just the stock market crashing and people going poor. Now we have things that affects the farmers. And in 1931, like a real big drought struck the Midwestern part of the United States from like Texas up to Canada. And we call this the Dust Bowl. Now, what is the Dust Bowl? What caused the Dust Bowl? I mean, it's not like, here's a bowl of dust. I mean, these are huge, mega large dust storms that just push all this loot loose soil and dirt all over the place, piling it up feet high, right? So like the farmers were just farming, right? Americans were buying, mass consumption. So they would just over farm the land. So the causes of this Dust Bowl is a large over farming of the land, right? This drought, this over farming of the land. So there's no water to push the dirt down. When you over farm land, it makes that soil, that topsoil, very, very loose. And it just, these storms would just pick this stuff up and push it and push it and push it. So not only are we suffering in the big cities, but we're suffering in the Midwest as well. During the 1930s, these dust storms closed farms. Farmers lost all their crops. Their crops were killed. And when I'm telling you that there was a lot of dust, like you see pictures, look up pictures of the dust storm. You will see cars covered in dust, like dirt up to the roofs of houses. There were sources saying that like the farmers would cut open the stomachs of their cows and their cattle, and like their stomachs would just be full of dirt. I mean, these people were breathing in. It was terrible. So about 2.5 million people left the middle of our country, the Midwest, and they moved westward during this time. So the Midwest winds up losing a lot of people. This is like the largest migration of Americans in the history. These people just moving out of the Midwest and moving out to places like California so they could still do farming. Oklahoma loses a large amount of people. They lose about 450,000 people out of Oklahoma. Now they're leaving in masses. Lots of times the families are splitting up, right? To just get out of Oklahoma, get out of the Midwest, Texas, Kansas, those areas right there, to move out westward to be able to do some sort of farming. Okay, now, do you think the Californians were really, really happy with this huge influx of people into California? No. And actually, there is a derogatory term in which the Westerners or the Californians came up with to discuss or to describe these people coming from the Midwest, especially Oklahoma. They would call them Okies, right? Oh gosh, there's another Okie coming. You just see a car full of people and you're like, oh great, here comes some more Okies. All right, so remember, it wasn't just the cities, right? We talked about the cities. We talked about how they were getting affected. We talked about the Midwest and how they were getting affected with the Dust Bowl. But there's something I want you to remember about the Great Depression. The Great Depression did not just affect America. The Great Depression affected the world. When we started losing money, right, when the stock market crashed, the United States called upon Germany, hey guys, remember those loans that we lent to you to pay off World War I? Well, we want you to pay those back in full right now because we need it. So Germany pays us. Germany's economy tanks, which is really why Adolf Hitler and the rise of the Nazi Party really flourishes, because they're poor. Now we're poor. We really cause a world Great Depression when our stock market crashes. So again, what gets us out of the Great Depression? That's going to lead us right into World War II. It is World War II and the idea of mass producing war supplies that will eventually get us out of the Great Depression.